everyone, to episode 115 of the Battlecast podcast. I'm your host, Peng, joined by my co-host, Anicor, and our special guest of the week, one that I'm very excited to have, ItsAXN, also known as the world champion of Pokemon Go for this year and a very accomplished battler. How you doing, Axon?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Good. I think Anicor's still in Japan right now, so I think he
I'm still in Japan, yeah.
yeah.
Bro, I climbed Mount Fuji last week, literally right after we recorded last week's episode.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just say, that was an
How was it?
interesting. Bro, you know what? The ascent was fine, yeah. The ascent was fine. It was like just climbing up, not stairs, but essentially just climbing
Yeah.
upstairs, yeah. Bro, I don't know what they were thinking when they did the descent because they were just like, okay, well, everyone's already up, yeah. There's no
Yeah.
stairs on the way down. It's literally just imagine a ski slope, yeah, and just loads of sand, loads of gravel. People are like, losing their balance, like falling over. You got some people running down, bruv.
And you didn't film this? That would have been prime content.
Film how? Like
fighting for your life,
bro. That was a good 3 hours of me fighting for my life. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. At one point, I was like, okay, I know people return from this mountain, right? So I know people go up and actually come back down because obviously, people would be like, oh yeah, Mount Fuji, yeah. But there was one point where I was like, yeah, but do they really? Because I've been going down this same hill for about 3 hours, yeah. And there's no exit. There's no signs. Anyway, I'm here to. I can confirm.
All this while the
hang it
GBL
out.
update dropped too, right?
Yeah. Oh, I was so close to doing podcast on the top of Fuji, which would have been quite entertaining. But
yeah, under climb down too for 3 hours.
Yeah. But GBL update.
Well, yeah, GBL updated. We're also happy that you're live, Anicor, because I can only replace my co-host so often in 1 year. So
That's true.
here we have that. But let's get a little bit into Axon first before we go into the update. For those that don't know, I feel like everyone that listens to our podcast do know you, but for some reason, if people don't know, give us a little brief introduction of you and kind of your journey into Pokemon.
All right, yeah. I'm ItsAXN. I recently won Worlds in Japan last month. I actually only started doing PvP in Pokemon Go when GBL first started. I didn't start back in the Sylph days.
Mm-hmm.
But, I've played Pokemon Go for about 5 years now consistently. But yeah, ever since Play Pokemon started, I've been constantly competing at the tournaments. My very first tournament was Indianapolis. I got 5th place there. Then I ended up winning NAIC a month later, which got me my invite to Japan last year. Or not to Japan, to Worlds in London last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just kept on playing. I got my invite again this year to Japan, and I ended up winning the whole thing. So that's my story, I guess, in a nutshell.
So you last season's regionals, you only competed once, right? And then NAIC, and that's it.
Yep.
Oh wow, okay. That was less than I for some reason thought too. Because
yeah,
you made so
it was
many
a
top
shorter
cuts,
season,
but
right? So
yeah. That's crazy. Just compete once beforehand and just win it all afterward. But
yep.
Were you a big Pokemon fan like growing up and stuff, or was kind of like Pokemon Go like one of your like first kind of games diving into the franchise?
Yeah, my first game I ever played was actually Pokemon Sapphire.
Okay.
And ever since then, I've basically got the games right when they released. So I'm a big Pokemon fan.
Gotcha.
You said that. So I just want to say, you said that you've been playing consistently for 5 years, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So does that mean like you didn't actually start in 2016, or like you?
Oh, I started in 2016. I just stopped for like I played the first like 2 or 3 months, and it got kind of boring. And my mom actually got me back into the game when like Groudon and Kyogre were in raids in 2018 or something. And ever since then, I kind of just stuck with it.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think after the first few months, it did kind of drop off for a little bit too. So I was just stubborn, just stuck with it. But that's really cool. So what, I guess for our context, what got you into PvP? I'm like, my guess is, did you know Sylph was hosting tournaments back then, or you did but just wasn't interested, or you kind of just found out about PvP through GBL?
Like, I knew about PvP and stuff. I just wasn't really that interested because there weren't any in-game rewards. And also my local PvP scene were like, it's non-existent here.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I actually, like, when I first saw that you got a pose and stuff for getting legend rank in season 1, I was like, oh, I gotta try this. I want to flex on my locals and stuff. And
Yeah.
so it wasn't the most humble starts to PvP. I just wanted to flex on people.
Uh-huh.
Um, but then, I actually didn't play in season 2, but I picked it back up in season 3, and I've got legend ever since. Been a
Nice.
chronic leaderboarder pretty much every season. Um, so yeah, that's how I first started off PvP, at least.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, well, speaking of you going in for the pose, now you have the most coveted pose of all
I
time
do.
too. So I think even if you were retired today, it's going to be a hard one to top. So that's pretty awesome. So I guess a lot of people listening to this podcast might be thinking, Axe is not one of those people that started back in the Silver days, like right off of like day one of PvP, but he still got really good really quickly. What kind of got you to the point you're at? Because, well, also, I mean, you definitely are a grinder in a sense, because especially if you take in fact, take into account that you took a break, you still have a crazy amount of catches, right? So you like when you got back in game, you must have just went pretty hard into it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm a really big grinder, but it's just that I catch consistently every day and stuff, so
Hmm.
I don't really take a break from the game too much. I have a pretty good place to play. So
Hmm.
I'm definitely a bigger grinder than a lot of PvP players. Like some of the people that qualified for Worlds, they're not level 50. They might not even have 100,000 Pokemon caught, right? So
Hmm.
a whole bunch of different players like and play styles can definitely compete at Worlds or like get to that level, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, so when you started GBL and stuff, like what do you like? What resources do you even tap into to get to where you're at? Because I assume when you start off, you're like, well, I don't really know what to use, right?
Yeah, like back then, like especially back when I was preparing to actually get into play Pokemon,
Hmm.
I kept on hearing that if you don't do Self right, you probably don't have a chance at these tournaments. Just because, I mean, back in the day, that was kind of I think, more respected format.
Hmm.
And so I was kind of nervous going in because I didn't have any of that experience. So I just kind of honed my skills in GBL, made sure that I watched every streamer I could, learned all my counts, all my move sets. Obviously, since I played all the regular games, I knew all my typings and stuff going in.
Hmm.
So that's another pretty big thing that you need to know. But yeah, I was just getting more and more confident in my actual ability just by playing the game as much as I could.
So did you do any show six at all
Not
before
before
Indianapolis?
Indianapolis.
Oh, so that was your
Um,
first. You just went straight in. And was like, here's my team
yep.
of six, and oh, that's
And
wild.
I actually joined a faction like right that week, and so I had like maybe 3 or 4 weeks of like faction practice before NAIC, but that's like literally all I had for show 6.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Would you personally
Um,
say that your your expertise in like the mechanics and GBL and stuff like that were um, maybe more important when getting onto the play Pokemon scene, or do you feel like you actually then had to get some show six experience in addition to keep up with the rest of the field?
Honestly, half the time I still don't know what I'm doing with show 6. Like I just kind of choose 3 Pokemon and go with it just off of like intuition and stuff, right? So, um, there's not a lot of logic that I have there. It's really just about mechanics and stuff when you get into the battle. Just make sure you don't build a team that's like really weak to anything your opponent has and just once you're locked in, the whole show 6 part doesn't really matter. You're just playing like a GBL battle that you kind of know what your
mhm.
opponent might have.
So I guess for those people that might be listening, I'm sure a lot of people listening have only done GPL. They haven't done show six, and you just went into Indianapolis with just no show six experience. Like, how do you even go about? Like, how do you even build your first team? Right, go into it because instead of just a team of three, you had to build a team of six. And I think your team was pretty similar to what you ran at NAIC and Worlds, outside
Mm.
of a Swamper
Yes.
instead of a Diggersby, right?
Yep.
Which was the first one you brought. Yeah.
Yeah, I used to love Diggersby, so I was like, I'm going to bring it to this tournament, and then I didn't bring it to like a single battle, and I was like, well,
Yeah.
I'll just use a better ground type there.
Hmm.
But yeah, with team building, a lot of it really comes down to just using the Pokemon I like to use. I think there's a lot
Hmm.
of teams that can work. Like we saw at Worlds this year, my team and Rubik's Master, we both had completely different teams of 6, right?
Hmm.
So it's really just bringing Pokemon that you're comfortable with, and like maybe bring 4 or 5 of your comfort picks and a sixth Pokemon that just rounds it out. And I don't know, I use PvPoke a lot. I think everyone who's going to be serious about going into these tournaments and stuff, go into PvPoke Team Builder. It really helps expose any sort of weaknesses to your team. And then obviously, just scrimming against other players. If you're kind of worried, like my team at Worlds was kind of weak to Altaria, and so I was like, you know what? If I'm going to use this team, I want to get practice with it. I want to make sure that if I do fight Altaria, I can beat it. And so, yeah, I think with PvPoke team building, and then scrimming with what you have with trusted scrim partners, that's a good way to vet out what team you want to use.
Yeah, I remember you giving a shout out to a couple people. I think like Doombug, Desynct,
Yeah,
maybe
those two
someone
were my
else.
main scrim
Yeah,
partners.
yeah, they're scrim partners. So I saw that Rubik's Master, the second place finisher, the finalist, tweet out about how he only did like maybe like 9 scrims or 6 scrims or something leading up to Worlds. Is that like how much did you actually scrim for that versus you just have so much experience already from GPL and from previous tournaments that you just felt pretty comfortable as long as you just got a little familiar with your team?
Yeah, I mean, I did probably a few more scrims than him, but honestly, probably not that many more. Um, what I think about scrims in general is like you don't want to scrim a ton, in my opinion. You want to scrim enough to get used to your team, but at some point, like especially if you're scrimming against the same person, you're just learning how to play against that person rather than learning how to play your team. But if you have a lot of scrim partners, definitely cycling through them a lot could work out. It's just kind of not how I prepare. I'm a lot more analytical. I like to go into PvPoke, make sure like look at all the worst case scenarios. Like what's the worst team I could face, or what's like the worst mons I could face, and then just kind of think about what I'd do if I were to encounter them, and basically save those kinds of problems for me when I'm on the stage, when I actually have to make those calls. Because a lot of that, like, you can prepare all you want, but when it comes down to those, like, gut decisions on stage, that's really all that matters in the end.
Yeah, we saw you make some pretty hype ones too, this past year in London or in Yokohama, but London as well. So let's talk a little bit about season 1 to finish that one off. But you were, did you finish? What was it, 5th place or 6th place overall?
Seventh. I was tied for
7th.
seventh at
Okay,
Worlds last year.
but I think you were the last trainer from North America. You
Yeah,
were the
I
top
was.
finishing North
I think
American
Rise
trainer.
was
Yeah.
like ninth or something, and I was seventh.
Right. Right. Talk us about your first Worlds experience. What was that like in general, facing off against so many players from around the world in person?
Honestly, last year I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really think I'd even get my Worlds invite because I only had like after Indianapolis, I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna place this high again. I thought fifth place was like my peak there, um, but my family was like, you know what? No, you got to keep trying. So they helped me make my way to Columbus and stuff, and I ended up winning that and getting my invite to Worlds, which was kind of a surprise, honestly, because I back then I didn't even know if I was even that good at the game. So putting myself out there really helped, like just figure that out. And then going into Worlds, I've been watching every single tournament that led up to that, so I knew a lot of the people I was going to be facing. I've seen them play, and I knew it was going to be really hard to do that good. And honestly, at Worlds, I only went 3-2. I got a round 1 bye last year, so that's what got me to top 8. I
Okay.
didn't do that great. I lost to Lurgan Rocket and Zardy, who both had, I think, spicier teams than me, and it just ended up kind of throwing me off. And that was good experience, I think, for this year to like know when you're fighting battlers from around the world, you're gonna have to expect different things.
Yeah, definitely.
That
I mean, it
said,
was also. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
sorry,
sorry.
I was going into this year's Worlds. How I'm interested to know how you built your team in consideration to the Asian meta, because I think that was like the most wild, considering PJCS, but also the hardest one to consider because there wasn't as much data as maybe the European and US tournaments.
I think that my main strategy going into Worlds was to just not fight the Japanese trainers because I knew they'd be very hard. So, no, I mean, I made sure that like Ishikawa boy, especially like his teams are always so wild, right? And he got second place at that at the tournament he qualified in. So I made sure I wasn't like super weak to any of the things that he brought, and I made sure my team in general, against like any sort of random spice pick I might see, would at least have like 2 mons that could handle them. Um, But my main consideration going into Worlds with team building was at NAIC this year, so not last year, but at the 2023 NAIC, I didn't do great. I only got 65th place because I really disrespected Charizard going in. So losing at NAIC really made me rethink what kind of Pokemon I wanted to bring, and it made me realize that Lanturn really is a Pokemon that's just kind of a must bring. And so I kind of built the rest of my team to help support Lanturn.
Yeah, we'll talk more about Lanturn in a later part of this interview as well. I remember you said that you didn't really use Lanturn much prior to this, prior to Worlds, but it turned out to work really well for you. Yeah, more than your Swampert too. I listened to your episode.
I did not bring my Swampert to a single match at Worlds.
Yeah, in a way, you were also channeling some L Shade there.
Yep.
Only 5 Pokemon. That's awesome.
Would you say it was beneficial though, in terms of like genuinely bench pressure? Was were people not bringing certain things? Okay.
Yeah, the steel types in general. I don't remember fighting too many of those. I think also it baited a lot of people to bring Altaria, which was already pretty good into my team, but it made my opponents pretty predictable with what they were going to do. So my Swampert being there definitely made an impact. So it's better than not having a Pokemon.
Yeah, that's definitely not a strategy I would recommend to people. So, that's pretty awesome. And then so after that first season, you came into season number 2, probably with high expectations, right? Because you performed really well at World Championships, and I wouldn't say you performed poorly because you still made top cut. Besides NAIC,
I'd say I
you still made top cut.
poorly at SLC.
Yeah.
I think I kind of got in my head there. Like, I didn't know if I was good still. I kind of felt, I only went 3-2 at Worlds, but I got top 8. I won NAIC. There's probably a lot of eyes on me. A lot of people are watching. And Salt Lake kind of was viewed as this easier tournament, right? So there's just all these things in my mind. Like, if you don't win this tournament, people are really going to, like, think that you're not that good. And that really got to me in the moment. And I think that combined with facing a Wigglytuff, which my team was actually pretty weak too.
Yeah, more stuff. I remember that.
Oh, mate.
It wasn't great. I did end up beating a Wigglytuff in the losers bracket though after that. So I barely made the day 2 at Salt Lake. I was not very happy with that performance because I knew it was probably my easiest chance at getting my invite last season.
Right.
But yeah, I think I recovered from there for the most part for the middle half of the season, and then NAIC I disrespected Charizard. I didn't think North Americans knew how to use it. So.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I think everyone disrespected Charizard, right? Like Rise and Dodge, they barely had Charizard counters on their own teams. They just happened to have a Charizard, whereas in House Star clearly didn't have a single one, unfortunately, too. So
yeah, exactly.
I think those Worlds was a very different story. I think people will stop disrespecting Charizard for that one, but yeah, it's still a very impressive run. I do remember specifically because Salt Lake City, you're using I think you brought Shadow Walrein, even though it was nerfed, right? And part of me was like, I'll admit this too, right? I do apologize in retrospect, but at the time I'm like, man, like maybe Accent's just only good because he had a good team season 1. Like he's a good player, but he had a good team, right? And the team's not as good. But every tournament after that, you kept proving me wrong too, and you were just playing incredible after that.
I mean, I still brought Walrein to Arlington for some reason. So
you did, and even then, you still got what, like top 5 in that, right?
Yeah, I got 5th place there.
Yeah,
too,
5th place.
So. I beat Wadaj there, Bopper. I lost to Bibelicious, but I also beat Jengles, so I beat a lot of decent players there at Arlington.
Yeah. You beat Jengles in the losers finals, I believe.
Yeah, that was my second time stopping him from getting day 2. I felt bad.
Someone's got to keep the streak alive. So, yeah, and I remember you too with Dodge. Actually, that Arlington tournament was super stacked. Looking back on it, it was really stacked because I think it was under like the cap originally, and then like the week of it shot up to like over 100 players.
Yeah.
And I think like at least over 90 showed up. So it was, and looking at the bracket, I was just like, this is rough. I mean, you got what, Dodge, Axon, Jangles in like the same bracket. Bibelicious too, right? Was in the same.
Yeah, who got second place there. So.
Yeah, and he played incredible. But yeah, and then of course you went on your kind of Pacific Northwest tear, which was definitely impressive one. Second place at Vancouver and the first place in Portland.
Yep. And I just ran back the same team. Like, and it's kind of a bad habit, I guess, that I have. Like when I'm succeeding with the team, I kind of just keep on using it. So at Vancouver, I got second place. then I was like, this team worked. The only reason I really lost to Dialap, well, not the only reason, because he's obviously a great battler, but I was like super weak to Water Gun, Lanturn, and Shadow Swampert, and he had both of those.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I think I could have still beat him if I just played better.
Yeah.
And I just ran it back at Portland, and I beat Shady Equation, who was running a Water Gun Lanturn as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew the team was good, but I just going into NAIC after that, because I was like, oh, this team works. I'm just gonna like swap out my Ice type for Dugong over Ninetales, because I think Ninetales is gonna be harder to use now with the Sand Slash buff.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, then Charizard just picked up and used like really hard, and it made me completely readjust what I was gonna do for Worlds.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you got that out of the way before Worlds too.
I know. I'm so happy I lost NAIC if it means I could win Worlds. So.
Right, and I feel like when you lost at NAIC, I mean, like it's like people kind of forgot like how successful you were prior to that because you're like made top cut every single time, incredible run, and I think Wadaj and like Rise were on people's forefront in terms of people to look out for at Worlds,
Yep.
With good reason, right? Because they were performing really well at the time. But looking back, I'm like, well, one bad tournament performance is nothing because that's like most people have bad tournament like Wadaj had bad tournament performances for the first like 3/4 of the season, right? It was until the last quarter that he really picked up. But yeah, that was I think I became a true believer when I remember so specifically it was game 4 against you and Shady Equation at Portland, and you had like I don't even remember the exact setup, but you had some of the most like hard RPS matchup in that game, and you somehow like you I think you caught like a thunderbolt somewhere crazy, and you just came
it was
back from that one to force a game 5.
like a one-turn move catch, right? The Water
Yeah.
Gun Lantern into my Registeel. Somehow I caught the Thunderbolt like right at the end of the game to win it for me.
Yeah. It was that when I was watching that, I was like it's like one of those moments where like everyone knows who the best player is in the tournament and like you're like only like proving it further, right? Because even the best players will run into tough matchups, but the fact that you have to like come out of that and just not lose a single set that entire tournament was crazy to me. But
yeah, in Portland, it ended up being one of the most stacked tournaments, I'd almost say, especially knowing who was in the grand finals at Worlds.
Exactly. So, a little precursor to Worlds. You and Rubik's Master get not just one rematch, but 2 rematches in World Championships. Do you mind sharing us a little bit about who you end up facing at Yokohama? Because I think you start off with Scafo, right? No, you start off with Emi Wido that was off stream, and then Scafo, right?
Yep. My first opponent was the senior world champion from last year, Emi Weedle, who constantly destroys me in GBL. So I was kind of getting worried going into that match. But I also kind of knew if I wanted to become the world champion, what better way to start than by taking one down? And so once I beat him, I kind of got that confidence boost that like, maybe I actually can do this. That was probably one of my hardest matches of the tournament. So I kind of carried that momentum going forward. And then my next opponent was Scafo, who ended up doing the Dancing Rob run almost, where he lost early, but he had an insane lower bracket tear where he almost made it to the grand finals. I think he was like 5th place after like a 9-win streak or something. So
yeah, and of course, very familiar with that one. He's rooting for the Europeans, and he was their last hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. After that, I had Lyle Jeffs, who was actually an NAIC rematch. He took me out day 1 at NAIC, so I did want to redeem myself there, and I ended up 2-0ing him, even though I think I probably should have lost game 1 to him. But I'll take the wins that I get. And then that was all of day 1 actually. So I went 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 to get into day 2, about as good as you really can do. And after that, it's like that you still have a long road ahead of you, but you set yourself up as good as you possibly could have to win the thing. Well, not I guess win it tomorrow, but like get yourself into the grand finals tomorrow. And then my first opponent of day 2 was I think Babo Husop, a South Korean player who apparently no one really knew about going into the tournament, but he nearly beat me. He beat me in my first game, and I had to reverse sweep him to stay in the tournament. His team was like so bad for mine. He had a Venusaur, and that just invalidated my water types pretty much instantly. So yeah, he's an incredible battler. Then it was Luminous, I believe, a Japanese battler who was on stream. We did that battle. I had some bad leads, but I was able to flip them with my Lanturn safe swap. Then it was Rubik's Master, who had such an insane team compared to mine. Like, his was way more creative than what I brought, and he obviously was making it work. He had a Deoxys defense, a Shadow Quagsire, like all these things that I kind of didn't want to see, but I was able to just kind of play around the neutral game in game 3, make some good catches and stuff, and calls at the end game to get me into the winners finals against none other than Wadaj, who I think was one of the favorite players going into that tournament.
Yeah, that game 3 against Rubik's Master was just nuts because I remember watching that from backstage, and Butters actually he was grabbing lunch or went to the bathroom, so he missed that game. So it was the next morning going into the grand finals. I was like, "Hey, look, like we're eating breakfast. It's like, hey, look, you gotta watch that game 3 because it was crazy." And I think it starts off with a psychic debuff or something, and then like a moonblast debuff. Like there was like both of those happened.
Yeah, in the
And
Lanturn against Altaria in the
yeah,
lead, he debuffs me with Moonblast, then I debuff him against Deoxys with my
yeah,
Metacham.
with the
Yeah,
Metacham. And Butter's like, wow, this game is crazy. I was like, no, 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 this is not even the crazy
it's
part.
not the
Like it gets
crazy
even
part.
more wild. Yeah, the Stone Edge catch on the Lantern, and then the knocked out like no shield call on the baits. Like that was just
Yeah.
it was wild. But
And so going into day
yeah.
3, like, sure, I've beat Rubik's Master 3 times, but they weren't close, or they weren't like sweeps. They were so close every single time. So I was like, you know, I still have quite a road ahead of me if I want to win it day 3.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And your set against with Dodge was pretty nuts too. Like that
Hmm.
was that best of 5. I didn't even know who was gonna win game 5 because I wasn't sure because he caught like a Psychon's Umbreon. It just went
Hmm.
back and forth. Like that's when like you're like at least when I was watching, I wasn't even commentating that battle, but I was watching in the spectator area, and I'm looking up and watching it, and I was like, this is like it's no coincidence why you and him were in the winners finals, right? Like it was very clear that there's like a clear skill gap between you two and obviously Rubik's Master and the rest of the competitors. Like it was no like the stuff you were doing, it felt like you were playing a different game in my mind. Like it looked like you were playing like Super Smash Brothers or something on the phone, right? Because it's just like the pacing was like just so different, and the swaps and everything, like the time switch timers are all misaligned constantly because of all the swap in and out. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
that was
mean,
incredible
especially
to
that game
watch.
5, it came
Yeah.
down to me and him getting a simultaneous KO, basically. Like
Uh huh.
if I didn't get that, he would have been able to take out my Noctowl in the back. So it was down to like 1 HP wins every game.
Yeah.
It was such a like
Yeah.
I don't know why. I had a feeling I'd have to fight him if I wanted to win Worlds, probably because obviously he had such an insane run going up to that point.
Uh huh.
And I think if I didn't beat Wadaj right then and there, he would have won Worlds and had like 4 huge tournament wins in a row. I don't
Uh
know
huh.
how anyone would have ever like contested that. He would
Yeah.
have just been the
There's no
best player
way.
in the world, no doubt, like greatest of all time.
Hmm.
I don't know. So I knew I had to beat him there if I wanted to give anyone else a shot.
Yeah, I remember you saying that on the Stadium podcast too.
Mhm.
The Stadium cast where you were saying like, he had so much hype going into it, and if you lost him in that winners finals, even if you face him in the grand finals, like to beat him in 2 best of 5s afterward is like such a gargantuan feat, right?
Yeah,
Um, but you slowed down the momentum, so he's got more to fight for sure. I know I'm sure he's
yeah.
hungry a little bit, but a very impressive performance from him just leading up to that as well. And speaking of people being hard to beat in 2 best of 5s, I was like, Rubik's Master has his work cut out for him because not only was he not able to take you out in any sets prior, but he's got to do it twice. I thought that maybe he has a chance of resetting the bracket because, like you said, the games were close, especially on day 1 or day 2 in that winners bracket. But also, I felt like he did have the team comp advantage.
Oh
So I
yeah.
was like, he's got some momentum coming in, beating a bunch of other players too.
His
Um,
team was exactly what I didn't want to see.
yeah.
That was probably the worst team I could have faced at Worlds, and I had to face it twice. So
Hmm.
I don't know how I came out of that.
Yeah.
Just a lot of neutral play and good calls, I guess, won me those matches against him. And
Hmm.
obviously,
Did you
game
do any
4.
prep?
Oh no, I actually didn't. Not going into day 3. Just because I don't know. I faced him before. I knew what to do against his team, and I did have an idea of what I'd change going into day 3. So I didn't really want to overthink it or like overstress, because at that point, right, like you only have one more opponent. You know how to play against them. You just have to do it. So I I kind of just had an idea, game plan going into day 3, and that's all I did. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
do a lot of scrims or anything, because also, like, if you try to ask someone else to scrim someone else's team, they might not play it the same. They might play it completely differently and mess you up. So I didn't really want to overthink it going into day 3. I knew what I wanted to do, and I just knew I had to play well.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, I personally, I also saw photos the next morning, that Sunday morning, of people at the social. I was like, oh, Axon was at the social. Maybe he's not, well rested and stuff. But no, you took
I
him
was there
out
for like an hour,
quick.
and I jumped out. Like, I was there just as a little cameo appearance at the start.
Yeah.
But no, I went to bed pretty good time that night, so I was well rested. I made sure that I didn't mess up my chances of winning worlds, because that was, I knew I still had quite a climb ahead of me if I wanted to become the world champion. His
Mhm.
team was such a good team against mine, and he's such
Right.
a great battler. Obviously, he's one of the best players, I think, at undercharging moves actually in the world.
Mhm.
I don't think anyone else really can do it like he does. So I knew if I wanted to win, I really had to just buckle down day 3 and make sure that I made the right calls.
Right. Gotcha. Yeah, you definitely did, and it was probably the right call not to stay too late at the party like Anicor did.
Yeah.
But that's
Yeah.
yeah. He was,
uh,
but he was hosting, so he had different priorities, I think.
yeah.
Anicor, did you have any other questions you want to ask Accent before we hop into thoughts coming into a game or season 3?
Not really. Not about you know, worlds or the season or anything like that. I think
Okay.
season 3 is a good start.
Yeah. So I talked a little bit to you, Axon, after the tournament in Yokohama about your plans for the upcoming season. I think for you, you were like, you know, obviously being a repeat world champion would be a very, high mark for sure. But outside of that, what were some of your plans? I remember you mentioning that you might start attending some of the different ICs around. Unfortunately, we don't have OCIC, so
Yeah.
reduces your opportunities a little bit, but there's still LAIC and EUIC coming up. Is that still kind of in the works, or do you have some other plans for season number 3?
Yeah, OCIC was probably my one that I really wanted to go to most. But obviously, with that off the table, I'm either probably going to try to do LAIC or EUIC still.
Hmm.
But my first tournament of the season is actually going to be in Sacramento in middle of October, I believe. So I think you're going to be there, right, Caleb? You're going to
I
compete.
am. I'm competing there too.
Yay.
So I don't know. I don't know what the best way to phrase it. If I'm lucky, I don't face you, but that also means I probably get knocked out sooner. And I don't know about facing you is called being lucky either. So we'll just see what we can do
Hey,
there.
grand finals.
But
We'll fight in the grand finals.
I would happily take that. I have a habit of taking second place in grand finals in California, but
That would
I
suck
take
now that you
second.
don't get the invites passed down, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah.
want to get that
Right, because I
first.
guess you already have your invite for World, so in the old system, your invite would have been passed down. But I
Yep.
think it's so we could talk about that too, right? And let's get your thoughts on that. What do you think about the new system? Because, like you said, the invites aren't passed out anymore. We talked about this on previous episodes too, but there's going to be championship points, and there's no cascading invites. Which, in some ways, for me, I kind of like because there's more to fight for in the grand finals. Because before, it's just like, yeah, we both made it, right? Like you going into Vancouver, yes, you didn't beat Xylap, but at least part of you is like, well, I at least qualify for Worlds, right? Like
Yeah, I
that's like
saw it as a
that's
win
been what
just
I was
getting
going for.
there, getting
Exactly.
into the grand finals.
Yeah. I think you would have felt a little differently if you didn't get the qualification to Worlds getting second at Vancouver, right? So obviously it's
Yep.
a little different of a system this year. So that on top of the championship points, what are your kind of preliminary thoughts as we're going into the first regional next weekend?
As a player who took a couple tournaments to really get his invite this last year, I think it would have been nice to kind of have that like slow progress build up over the season rather than being like, I didn't get first or second. That means that tournament was basically meaningless, right? You're
Hmm.
always working towards getting your invite now. The points do seem a little high to me, But you can do the local tournaments. You can do. I think internationals are actually kind of the best way to get your points, just with how many more points you get by competing there.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's still that chance of just getting the automatic invite, and I love that they didn't remove that. The first place player or this first and second internationals, they're always going to just get their invite to Worlds, and so it's definitely, I think, an improvement. We'll have to see how many people actually end up qualifying through the point system. I know, like people like a Mind Joke, he worked so hard to try to get his invite last year. He would have got it with the point system, but unfortunately, because it was just you have to get first or second, or else you're just out of luck. Uh, a lot of players like that really kind of got just barely not getting an invite to Worlds, and I think that for players like that, it's going to be a lot better.
Right.
Do you think locals are going to be something that you're going to particularly take part in, or do you not
I'm
feel the need?
trying to get them set up around me. There actually aren't that many. Like I'd have to drive like 2 hours to get to any local. So, I'm
That's
trying to
pretty
get
far.
my local game store to, start hosting them. But I don't know. Obviously, those locals, they are going to be important for people who need the points. So it's going to be unfortunate for the players who don't have their invites if they don't have access to that local scene. I know a lot of places do, and a lot of places don't. So that's kind of like location advantage where some players, they can get like half of their invite just by playing in local tournaments, whereas other players, they're probably going to have to work and travel to maybe 5 or 6 regionals just to get their invite.
Yeah.
So if these locals do pick up more, and like there are a lot more options for people, I think that's going to make this new point system a lot easier for people to switch over to.
Yeah. As someone that's qualified for World Championships 2 years in a row on the old system, what what do you think is a better format? The new systems coming in or the last year's system? Because I think Anicor brought this up in a previous episode. He said, this is like kind of pay to win, right? Because
It
obviously you have to
is.
travel to a lot, but at a certain point, if you go to enough tournaments, you could, and you're playing like decently well, you can get yourself a world's invite, right? No matter what. But the question is that the competitive format we kind of want, or I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because even if you're paying for your invite because you go to everywhere, you probably still won't perform that well at Worlds unless you like make a sudden change in like a month, right?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely an aspect to it now where, if you are, wealthy enough and like have enough free time to travel to like every tournament and every international, you basically have your invite on lock already.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to worry about, placing first or second. You can just kind of get top 8, maybe top 16. I was looking at it actually at internationals. You get 100 points for winning like your first match if there's 256 people.
Oh my
So
gosh.
like if you just go to the
That is mad.
internationals and do that 3 times, that's 300 points.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's definitely a pay to win aspect now. But as someone who's never come in like third place and been that like one win off of the world's invite, I can't imagine how bad it feels to just have nothing to show for doing that. If I would have like got third place, I know like players like Trent, he's had that happen twice to him, where he's
Mm-hmm.
been one win off of the world's invite, and after that tournament, he had like no more progress towards an invite than he did before. I think in general for competitors that are already like planning on going to multiple tournaments, it is going to be an improvement over the
Mm-hmm.
winner takes all kind of thing we had.
Yeah, and there's something to be said about, like, for example, LAIC last year, and I guess you could say NAIC and EUIC the first year. These tournaments had under 128 players, and arguably, sometimes the competition is just as stacked as a random regional that has over 128 players, right? But at
Mm-hmm.
international, the third and fourth place get the invite. Like Dancing Rob
Yeah.
got his invite EUIC last year, uh, through the third place finish, right? The first one
Yeah.
in Germany, and he ended up winning it all. So you could make the argument that someone that placed third place in the tournament can still have the skill level to win it all. Um,
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
yeah. I'm sure there'll be some players that are maybe a little bit below skill level compared to a lot of the other world's competitors because they just traveled to a bunch and did a bunch of locals. But at the end of the day, like if you're gonna work that hard, we'll see what you got at Hawaii, I guess. But
Yeah, I
True,
mean
true.
that's
good luck
the
if you're
goal,
facing
right?
ItsAXN round 1. Yeah.
Yep.
Would you say that you
Um,
prefer so like there was some like speculation before they I guess like confirmed things that potentially we'd be doing Swiss. So obviously that's not the case, but do you think it's something that you'd like to see in the future where tournaments are Swiss instead of double elimination?
I think that could be an interesting option. Like logistically, I could see why it would be a problem for them to try to do. They already have a problem when they have like all these like phones playing at once, just like in one of the 4 groups. And Swiss would kind of require everyone to be playing at the same time. So I think that's why they're hesitant on doing it. They don't have the bandwidth and stuff set up. But like just like as a competitor, if they were to switch to that, it definitely would be an improvement because losing round 1 doesn't mean that you're going to have to do twice as many battles to win the tournament. It just means that, sure you're down a bit, but if you still win the next I don't know how many it would be, like 5 or 6 matches maybe, depending on the size of the tournament obviously it would change. You'd still have as good a shot as someone who may have won their first round. So I think it's a lot more forgiving if you end up losing early on in the tournament if you go to Swiss. And it definitely, I could see it working out as long as they could get the actual infrastructure to support it. But I think that's what's holding us back.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of different formats too, I don't know if this is going to be a thing or not for this upcoming season. By the time the episode release, maybe that is the thing. But if you had the option to have open team sheets, where like you reveal all the move sets of your team as well as your opponent's team when you go into battle, would you prefer that, or would you prefer to keep some of that hidden until like it's first played out?
Unfortunately, I think open team sheets aren't going to happen, but I think they should. Um,
Mhm.
Going on stream, being the first person on stream day 1, you're at a huge disadvantage. Your opponents are all going to see your move sets. You're not going to know what they use. I've had that multiple times where I've been on stream before my opponent. They could see what I'm doing. I don't know what they're doing.
Mhm.
So open team sheets, in my opinion, would actually just like benefit just the overall like fairness of play.
Mhm.
Obviously, it takes away from any sort of surprise factor. But if you're trying to win off of surprise factor, you might get through day 1, but day 2, everyone's probably going to know about it anyway.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. I think that overall, open team sheets would actually be a good thing for Pokemon Go, just to minimize the disadvantage of getting on stream early.
Mhm. Yeah, I think, especially in a best of 3, like, you could definitely cheese someone off a win with a surprise factor game 1, and then game 2, you might RPS them or just have, like, a
Yeah,
good
yeah.
matchup. So, I've definitely been I don't know, I don't think I've lost because of that, but I definitely lost, like, a game 1 because of that. I'm like, thought they're building up to, like, a dynamic punch meta champ, and it's like a power punch, right? And I'm just
Oh
shielding
yeah,
the
yeah.
first power punch. It's just an awful feeling. Um but yeah, we'll see how it goes. I mean, they have open team sheets for VGC, and I think I don't know about TCG how that runs. I mean, that's a whole different thing. 'Cause it's like a deck list, but I personally agree with that on that one. What do you think, Anicor? You agree?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think Axon, you
You
made a
seem like
good
the kind
point
of
where
person that would cheese someone with a cheese moveset, but
hey,
hence why you're
what
kind of
like
hesitating here. I don't. I'm just
no, no, I
trying to
think you
read.
made a good point about like because okay, to be honest, it is nice to have the multiple options and potentially, be using something like a bit unique. But I think you make a good point where if you're trying to win from cheesing someone, then, how much of a useful win is it, right? Because that will
Mhm.
only really get you so far. Um, and I think also, considering this recent update, there's a lot of mons that have gotten, extra moves. Some of them may be useless. Some of them may be only, giving you like an extra small dynamic. So again, with mons getting way more moves in their move pool, it may be sort of like a necessary balancing factor.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, Okay. Well, I think that's we'll wait and see. By the time this episode releases, it's possible that we have this info. But we will be heading into Pittsburgh for right after this episode. So it'll be pretty cool to see how all of that shakes out. So you mentioned Sacramento would be your first tournament. Did you mention specifically which IC you're probably targeting, or you're going to go for both? I feel like NAIC is probably easy to head towards, but EUIC and LAIC specifically.
Yeah, I don't know yet. I just know I kind of want to do one of them. So when it gets closer, I'll probably make the decision there. But
Okay.
NAIC, now that it's not in Columbus, I was kind of thinking about skipping it this year. But now that it's not in Columbus,
Yeah.
I might want to go there again. New Orleans isn't that cool, or not that bad of a place, right?
Yeah. I've never been, but I've wanted to go for a while,
Mhm.
even though I grew up in Georgia, so it's like pretty close by, but never had a chance. I heard it's a pretty fun place to be. Anicor, maybe you should head on down too. The three, we could record another podcast with three of us in person.
Yeah, little live thing. Who knows? I've never actually been to the US in it, so that would be a.
Oh, you haven't been to US at all?
Yeah. Nah,
Oh,
not at
okay.
all. Yeah.
I don't know if New Orleans is the
We'll see.
best like first city to visit, but
Don't they usually
it does
have
get
that like
wild there
festival
sometimes.
thing?
So just Mardi Gras.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, but that's usually usually a little bit earlier in the year.
Okay.
But yeah, there's definitely Mardi Gras, and there's Mardi Gras beads you could get, which we won't go into detail on how you get it, but it's a little explicit content that you have to partake in.
Okay.
So just as
Maybe
a general
there's more
gist of
reason.
what the place is like.
Right.
Yeah, so it's gonna be a big one. So that'll be cool. I think we have a quiz. You have a quiz for us, Anicor.
We
And
have a quiz.
I hinted at it. You want to break down what the quiz is, the general gist, or did
Right.
It was my idea, but I had you handle it because I'm the best quiz taker here.
So it's for you, bro. It's all about so it's all about your opponent's accent, obviously.
Oh, okay.
We don't need to hear more about Caleb's opponents. And yeah, so it's just generally questions about you, your opponents. Obviously, you'd expect that you know yourself better, but some of these things are a while ago, so
Yeah.
maybe
Wait, so
maybe you don't.
how many questions are there in total?
So in total, there are 5 questions.
5 questions. Okay. So
Yeah. So
I think maybe yeah. We had I had our friend Palmer Stuff that works over at DracoQuiz come up with some questions that pertain to you in some ways. So they're questions about people that you have faced. So let's say, for example, there might be a question about, I don't know what the questions are, but there might be a question about Ruby Smasher, who he faced in Portland. But the question would be about anyone that you face in any of your tournament runs, right, in the past.
Yeah.
So we'll do a little friendly competition, me versus you. I think Anicor will ask this question. We'll both just have a response ready, and then we'll just reveal the response and see who could get the best on these 5 in a row. Me, commentating some of these tournaments and spectating it, I might have some info here, but curious to see your own knowledge of some of your opponents.
Man, when I'm competing, I kind of just zone out of all that stuff. Let's see if I know.
Yeah, let's see how it goes. All right, I'm ready for the first one, Anicor. Let's hear it.
Okay, so the first one is, how many of ItsAXN's 7 unique opponents at Worlds, this year's Worlds, also qualified for last year's Worlds?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm really glad I asked ItsAXN earlier who he faced in Oklahoma.
Do you count the seniors division?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll count the seniors division.
This is interesting.
Okay, I think I know.
All right, you want to go first? I have my number in mind too.
Yeah, I think 2.
I'm guessing 3.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, well, Axon, who are the 2 that you?
Weedle and Wadaj.
Okay, so those are the 2 I had, and then the third one was going to be. I'm just like throwing. I feel like I remember this for some reason. Husop, was Husop the third? If there was 3?
No. Okay, so there was 3, but it wasn't Babu Husop.
Was it Chiodo?
Nah, well, you didn't face
Oh,
Geodude.
Luminous.
It was
Luminous, I guess.
Yeah, it was Luminous.
That's when I was unsure about there.
I feel like I still get the point for that because I got the
You
number
do.
right. But
You said 3. You just didn't know which 3.
I just didn't know which 3. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll give you the point for
fair.
that. Maybe we'll half it later. There's I don't know if it seems relevant for a tiebreaker. Okay, next question. So, which of these Pokemon did Axon not face at this year's Worlds? Okay, Shadow Swampert, Noctowl, Venusaur, Chestnut, or Azumarill?
Whoa. Okay. I feel like this is like a trick question. Like I feel like one I really want to guess, but all right, I have.
I know what I'm gonna say. Do you?
Yeah. Well, I'll go ahead on this one because I feel like you're more
Okay.
likely to have this one. Man, that chestnut seems so tempting, but I feel like someone had it there. I'm gonna guess. This sounds like I'm gonna be feeling really bad if it's not this because it's like obvious it shouldn't be this. But I'm gonna guess Shadow Swampert.
Mm.
What's your guess?
I was gonna guess Noctowl.
What? You didn't face a single Noctowl?
I don't know. I don't remember anyone using Shadow Swampert against me.
Wait, what was the answer, Anicor?
It was Shadow Swampert.
Oh, what?
Why didn't anyone use that? Who had that?
Well, no one.
Well, I guess no one, right? Because that was the.
Or no, wait, who had Noctowl?
Let me just quickly check who had Noctowl.
I swear, everyone had Alt against me. That's what I was thinking.
Was it?
I'm also wondering who had
It's
flipping
gotta be
Chestnut.
Bobo, right? Oh, Lyle had Chestnut.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, I knew Chestnut.
Okay,
had
I'm 0 for 2. I'm out of this tournament. Oh man.
So I knew that Luminous had a non-Shadow Swampert, so that's why I knew there's a chance. And I didn't remember. I knew Rix had a Quagsire, and
yeah,
I don't remember what Wadaj had, but
so.
I don't remember. I didn't remember Swampert.
Yeah, Wadaj had Azu and Lanturn, I think.
Yeah, right. And Rubik's had Azu too.
And what had maybe been like either Scaffo or Bobo would have had.
Yeah, that had Noctowl. Oh, what about Emiweedo? Did he have anything?
It was Scaffo who had the Noctowl.
Scaffo, okay, of course.
Yeah.
Scaffo coming back from the grave and getting me here.
Actually, you know what? Bobo also had the Noctowl as well. So.
Scaffo and Bobo, okay.
Yeah.
Wait, I knew that. I lost game 1 to Bobo because of the Noctowl.
I'm feeling pretty good. I don't usually take wins on the accent, but I'll take it. It might not be in the
hey, you're up 2-0
tournament format. Yeah, reverse sweep time.
I'll try.
Okay, so next question. Rubik's Master changed 2 Pokemon on his team going from Portland to Worlds. Which 2 Pokemon were they, and what was the change?
Oh, so we had to name 2 Pokemon that he had originally, and then 2 Pokemon that he had on the new team. You have to get all 4 Pokemon correct, essentially, for this one to count.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how should we distribute the points in terms of like?
All or nothing. We should do all or nothing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to name all 4.
Okay. I think I got it.
You think you have it?
That was quick,
dude. I'm telling you, this is like the one good thing I'm good at accent. This is why I'm like, I want the challenge.
Like, if I could write this out and like have 20 minutes on this, I might get it. Dude, so I know at Portland he had his Kanto Ninetales, and let's see, he didn't bring Deoxys to Portland, right? I don't think so. I know he had Alt. He had, I think he had Azu. He had Umbreon. Oh, and then his Quagsire. That's got to be new. So Deoxys and Quagsire were new. Kanto Ninetales. Oh, he had a Reggie, I think, back then. Did he? Did he have that Reggie? That's the question. I don't remember fighting a Reggie. I think it might be stupid, but I'm gonna say Kanto Ninetales and Registeel were swapped out for Deoxys and Quagsire.
Okay, so I'm gonna agree
Oh
with.
wait, no, wait. No, I said that wrong, right? Did I?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
because I had like
he
3
had.
Pokemon from his team here.
Yeah,
Oh,
you said
I'm
Registeel and
confused.
Kanto Ninetales for the first one, right? Portland one.
He had Registeel here at Worlds. So okay, so on his team at Worlds this year, he had Quagsire and Deoxys that were new, and at Portland, I think he probably had like Kanto Ninetales and I don't know, maybe G-Fisk as a steel type. I don't remember if he had G-Fisk.
You
But
want to lock that in, or?
yeah, I guess that's what I'm locking in.
Okay. I had 3 of the similar ones. So Quagsire and Shadow Quagsire and Deoxys Fence, I think for sure are new for Worlds. Shadow Kanto Ninetales for sure for Portland. And I don't remember this one specifically, but based off of process of elimination, instead of Deoxys Fence, he probably had a Metacham for Portland. That's what I'm going to go with.
Oh, right. I could have guessed that. That would have been smart.
But I'm not entirely sure on that one, but that's what I'm going to go with. How did I do?
Well, actually, so both of you got 3 of the same correct,
Yeah.
but it was that last Pokemon that you missed out, and it was actually Trevenant.
Wait, he
Wait,
didn't have a
both missed
Metacham at
it?
all in
Uh,
Portland?
well, let's have a
This
look.
might be a faulty question. I'm just saying. Yeah, it was
Yeah, true
Trevenant
that,
meta. That's
'cause
true. Actually, I didn't even
People
think
have
about
been
that.
known not to run Metacham sometimes.
Yeah, I guess especially before the Trevenant nerf, that was actually a very feasible strategy. He had no Trevenant, or he had no Metacham.
okay, so
I won't shoot the messenger, but Anicor.
yeah. Just I'll be taking the grievances back to Polly. So he had no Medicham.
Oh,
Wow.
okay,
Yeah,
so
he
we
Okay.
decided
three
to
and
go
three.
for
So I
the
guess we both lost.
Shadow
Yeah.
Nine
All right.
Tail.
No one gets a point on that one then.
Okay, so there's
Okay.
still an
Ah,
opportunity.
Yeah. The
Still
comeback is still alive. Yeah.
still 2 points
Man, I thought
available.
Metacham was such a safe guess, but yeah, Trevenant makes a lot of sense
Yeah,
too. Pre
I
pre
forgot that was a
Trevenant nerf.
Pokemon in the game.
Yeah.
It's been
yeah.
gone for so long.
Anicor might have to use him all day for one of the GBL days.
Hey, I was.
We have a bet going on for that one.
Well, yeah. We'll see about that one.
All right. What's another question?
Okay. What I feel like this one's a easy one. I'm not gonna lie, but what spicy Pokemon did Emmy Weedle bring to Stuttgart this season?
What? So it's just like the spiciest,
Spicy
honestly.
water Pokemon. My bad.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
Mantine?
that's fine. I just I wasn't sure like how you define
Well,
the
yeah.
spice,
I
right?
mean, yeah.
I guess like the
There's
most
gonna be
ranked
one
one
that
on
stands
PE
out,
Poke.
right? You know,
Yeah.
It's gotta be Mantine, right?
Yeah, I'm going Mantine as well.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You even
Easy.
said it was a water type. I was like, you didn't have to say all that. Like I think we all
Yeah.
knew.
Yeah. I mean, again, hey, messenger.
But I was gonna go with Mantine anyway. So
Yeah, I think the you know what? Actually, I think if the question was about his EUIC team,
I wouldn't
that
know
would have
what he
been
brought there.
I know that one. Arachninid.
yeah,
Dude, this is not fair.
yeah.
I didn't say this quiz is fair. I'm just saying this is the best chance I get to taking a W off of accent.
Yeah, because
Alright,
EUIC he just pretty much just ran his world's team, which was quite
yeah.
okay.
He said Arachninid was
an
bad
interesting
too.
one. Yeah.
All
Okay,
right, let's get that final question.
final question.
Yeah,
Wait, is there even any? Okay, there's no opportunity for redemption, but
but it could be a 3-2 instead of a
there's
3-1. You know.
yeah, exactly. You know, it
Yeah.
could be
Yeah.
could be kind of nice. Okay, so after we saw the meta shift following Vancouver, with the finals matchup, you versus Dialab, the same 2 teams performed matched up again in the finals of another regional later that month. What was the regional and who were the finalists?
I'm ready.
Oh, man. I know who was using my team. Oh man, I don't know which regional, and I don't know who beat him.
Bro, I thought this was going to be an easy question as well.
Yeah, Caleb's probably got this on lock. I know Auburn got second place with the team. Who could beat Auburn? Was it was that Richie? I don't know. Caleb knows, and he's just judging me right now.
I mean, to be fair, I worked that event too, so
yeah. Okay, this is a little
so it's
unfair.
a little unfair. Yeah.
I don't even remember what tournaments we had last season, because that was like there were like 3 tournaments back to back there, like Knoxville, Fort Wayne. Let's see, was it? I'm gonna make such a fool out of myself here. Just because they're what I remember. I guess I'll say it was at Knoxville. I'll say Auburn got second, and maybe Richie got first. I don't know.
That's pretty good. It's you're correct, except the regional was Charlotte.
Charlotte. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
That was one right.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, that's pretty good though. I mean,
yeah. Stick to playing.
Yeah.
Wait, I feel like that question is also a little bit. It's technically not someone that AXN faced, right? Because you didn't face Auburn or Richie, but
that's true.
Yeah, it was just a team
it was related to you though. Yeah, in terms of the team.
Yeah.
Team stuff. Yeah.
I did watch that tournament though. I should have known that.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that there would be a test on this later. I should have been taking notes.
Well, getting Richie was pretty clutch too, because Richie came all the way from Mexico, so it wasn't like a typical player we see in NA. So that was a really good answer there.
Well, I at least tied with you on 2 questions, right? So
yeah.
And one of them we both got wrong. So.
Yeah. I actually the one I was surprised I got right was the Shadow Swamper one.
The one I was surprised I got wrong was that one too, because I should have known.
Yeah.
Because I forget what my opponent leads half the time, so
that's fair.
How am I supposed to remember this stuff from a couple weeks ago? That's too much.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys do this, but there's multiple times where I'm like trying to like farm down a Pokemon, like their last Pokemon. I'm like, oh, they still got a shield, and then I barely win the game. I look, and I'm like, wait, they didn't have a shield at all, and I had like 1.5 charge moves ready, but like they probably thought I was just trolling or something. But part of me was like, I was so out of it, I thought they had a shield the whole time. Yeah, but. Yeah, well, thank you for the hosting the quiz, Anicor, and for the quiz questions, Polly. That was a fun one.
Shows what I know about my opponents. I'm so sorry, everyone I've ever fought.
That's okay. When you win Worlds again next year, just be ready to be back on the podcast, and you'll know what to study.
Yeah, do your homework, bro.
Yeah. Yep.
But okay, we'll talk a little about this because we're kind of leading into. We have like a little T segment. Where we talk about different stuff going on, usually on X or Twitter, as you call it these days. But you actually had an interesting tweet earlier this week after the moveset balance came up. And, last week when me and Eric were recording, we didn't know what the movesets were specifically, but they dropped, and then the energy values dropped. Because when they initially dropped the update, it was just like, oh, Sky Attack's going to cost more energy, Aerial is going to be less energy, but we didn't know exactly the values. And then we got all the values. And you actually quote tweeted people talking about the different energy values for the different moves, fast moves and charge moves. And you said specifically, I don't want to sound ungrateful, but man, these changes aren't changing much. Aerial Ace and Astonish are still bad. Spark arguably got buffed. Dig is literally a Scorching Sands clone without debuff chance. If they want to shake things up, they need to do a lot more. So I agree with you a lot on your take on that, but kind of what are both of your kind of preliminary reactions to the moveset updates? I guess once we got the energy values, because I think everyone was a little bit like looking forward to it once we saw like the general changes before we saw exactly like how these moves changed.
Yeah. For me at least, I think the only changes that matter in the slightest. Obviously, I think Lanturn is probably a little worse now with the way Spark is, but it's still incredibly viable. And then the Sky Attack nerf is the other thing that actually changed anything. And then, well, I guess Gligar's like the third thing. There's probably 3 things. Gligar being good now because of Dig and Aerial Ace. But, if they actually, like, at Worlds, right, they were kind of hyping up that this is the biggest moveset update they've ever done. Mm-hmm. I guess if you, like, count each individual change and move that they've added to each Pokemon, sure, maybe. but like 95% of that's kind of just filler. Like you're not going to see Magical Leaf Gardevoir winning any regionals anytime soon.
Yeah.
I'd hope.
That's true.
Or winning
And
any like GBL battles at that.
yeah, and there's a lot of changes like that. There's a lot of changes that kind of just like you wonder what was the point? Why did you do this? Why did you make Astonish increase by 1 energy? Like, what was the point in the slightest of doing that? Even if it was a Snarl clone, Astonish wouldn't even be that good, in my opinion, because Shadow Claw is still a thing, and Shadow Claw is just a fantastic move. And they made Dig the same as Scorching Sands, which is a move they just added in. I don't know why they made it 80 damage. Like I would have loved to see if it was 85 damage and 50 energy. Give Diggersby like a little bit of a choice. Do you want that little bit of extra damage, or do you want the debuff chance? Like that would have been kind of cool in my opinion. And they just weren't bold with their changes. They were really safe, I think, with a lot of them. They barely changed Psychic. They barely changed. Well, they kind of side graded Lanturn. And that's like all they really did with like the main meta Pokemon. Oh, as Earthquake as well. Stunfisk is slightly worse now. We'll probably see other steel types. But yeah, I was kind of expecting more, if I'm going to be honest. I thought that they'd be a little more bold. Maybe a 35 energy Aerial Ace. Let's see the world burn. Give flying types a Weather Ball clone.
Yo.
Yeah.
This guy's won worlds and now he just doesn't care.
Yeah. I've just like I was kind of making some teams just for fun for like what would I bring to Pittsburgh, and like 5 out of 6 are like Pokemon I would bring, maybe even 6 out of 6 are just Pokemon I would have brought last season. Lickitung's probably a little safer now that Noctowl's probably gonna be a little less common. But honestly, you could just run what you were running last season and you'd still be in at least a decent spot. And that's a little disappointing to me.
Yeah.
But we'll see what the players at Pittsburgh do if they're a little more creative than me. If they're gonna try out some of these new picks, some Trailblaze Pokemon, some Triple Axle Pokemon, maybe Diggersby with Scorching Sand. I think that's like the only viable Pokemon with a new move that we're gonna see potentially make it far in the tournament. So yeah, there's a lot to consider with the update, but I think most of it is just kind of like either they're setting something up for later, or it's just never going to be useful, like adding another move onto Claydol, which is hilarious, but I don't think that's what's going to shift him over to being the most viable Pokemon in the game.
Right.
No, I think at this point you kind of have to give a move to Claydol every update. Just as tradition.
True.
But you know what? I
TM
think
black hole at that point.
Yeah, literally, bro. Just don't touch it. No. But I think it's interesting. So, with a lot of people towards the end of last season were talking about the game and accessibility issues, and I think it's something that we discussed on like one or two episodes back about how the viewer numbers for Pokemon Go were so high, but getting people into the game might be slightly difficult. So obviously, the accessibility bar is already at a certain level. If you shake up the meta every single time, and rotate Pokemon out where all of a sudden stuff you built this season are not necessarily as viable next season, then that kind of increases the bar of accessibility a lot higher. So I'm wondering, like, looking at the meta, would you prefer a complete shakeup, or do you actually think that maybe a slow, more consistent change is better? Because I think one thing is, okay, well, the amount of meaningful changes might be quite low, but something like, removing Noctowl out of the meta and, perhaps replacing it with like Mandibuzz or Gligar, opens things up a bit more, because now you have Pokemon which may have been hard checked by Noctowl, now acting a bit more soft into into those flying matchups or something along those lines. So maybe like more grass types coming in or something.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting point. Like if they did do a big shakeup every 3 months, I think that would have been a bit much for players who are especially trying to just catch up. I think going into a new season, though, it's completely fine to just throw a whole bunch of stuff against the wall. See a bigger shakeup. The rest of the changes throughout the season, yeah, just have them be minor tweaks, or like if there's a problematic Pokemon, let's tone it down a bit, or let's add some new Pokemon into the game itself. Maybe they're planning on doing that because we are having the Gen 9 Pokemon. They're going to be showing up. Maybe they're going to add some cool new Pokemon like Annihilate. We might be seeing that at some point here. And there's a lot of other Gen 9 Pokemon, Tinkaton, that could be there to shake up. So maybe they're just trying to spread it out across the season. But yeah, I think if they did like a huge update every 3 months, that would be a bit much. But once a year, right after Worlds, I think that would be a time where you could definitely see them doing that, and I think new players would understand why they would change things like that. But yeah, accessibility is definitely a big problem, and I think that there's much bigger problems to accessibility than the moveset updates. I think just the lack of the spawns of the viable Pokemon. Like, if you want a Medicham right now, how are you going to grind for it? There's no way to like hunt for specific Pokemon. There's no way to get like a lot of rare XL candies if you don't have like the stockpile already. How are you going to get those things, or TMs even? TMs are just a global resource that every Pokemon needs, and they are such a slow resource to obtain, and just the mechanics for TMing are so counterintuitive, where you're just like TMing back and forth the same moves over and over again. There's a lot of problems. And stats is like the last one, right? My Worlds team had some crazy stats on it. My Pokemon weren't all rank 1s. If you're not catching as much as I am, or as much as a lot of people are, especially if you're a newer player, how are you going to have the Pokemon built that you want to build? You're just going to be like, well, I just caught a Medicham. It's not great, but it's all I can really use. It's probably going to lose to other Medichams and stuff. But yeah, like there's a lot of individual accessibility issues that I think would be a lot more important than just them updating move sets and changing who's like super viable like once a year per se.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, after nerfing Medicham, it moved all the way to #1 in the rankings. So
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really shows how much of a nerf some of these Pokemon got.
Yeah.
I know a
Big
lot
hit.
of people were debating recently on Twitter about one specific Pokemon, that being Spark Lantern.
Yep.
And you actually even made a poll on, you said, all right, let's sell this. Lantern was buffed or nerfed were the only two options.
Yeah.
And out of 866 votes, it looked like 55.5% said it got buffed. I personally voted nerf. I don't know if you voted or not, Anicor. What are your thoughts on this?
I
But
didn't vote. I'd say no. Well, I mean, yeah, I'd say nerf in it because again, it's not completely efficient anymore. Obviously, it plays a bit differently, but like I think that was a good point about last season. Like it was just energy wise, it was completely efficient. So it was like such a consistent Pokemon in most of his matchups. So now there's a bit more variability, and I think that's definitely beneficial for uh, you know for the meta just in general. But
yeah, what do you
Yeah,
think
personally,
on
I
that?
do think it was nerfed slightly. But I think that honestly, it's kind of a smart thing they did, because one of the most oppressive things about Lantern was its speed. Just being able to outpace things like Sableye and like anything that paces like 665 pacing, it just outpaced them because it had an 8 energy move and a 8 energy fast attack and a 40 energy move. By changing that, it's like you're still doing what Lantern does for the matchups that you should be winning, but against things like Shadow Swampert, where like just a few sparks could like really easily flip that matchup, because you just get to 2 surfs before they'd get to the Hydro Cannons or the Earthquakes, depending on how you want to play out that matchup. Like a lot of those matchups that should be counters to Lantern have kind of gone back in favor of the things that you think should beat it. So still very usable. But not quite as overpowered as it was.
Yeah. I think I did read somewhere on Twitter that if you land a surf against a Shadow Swampert, and they don't land like if you shield one Earthquake or something, then you can like spark down or something like that in the 2 shield. I don't know, something weird like that. It was very specific, but also at the same time, like you could just beat Lanturn going straight Hydra Cannon with
Yep.
Swampert in the 2 shields. So that matchup was a little weird already if you're throwing Earthquake and gets shielded. But I don't know. They I guess we'll wait and see how that one ages.
Yep.
I agree with you. I do
Yeah.
think it's a nerf. But a lot of people on Twitter seem pretty split on it. It seems like most of them agree that it's a buff.
I think my poll was a little disingenuous there. I should have probably put a third option because people could only say buff or nerf, right?
That's true. Yeah.
I'd like it. You force them. You gotta force them to commit because there's a lot of
I
people
wanted
sitting
to
on the
see-
fence and probably voting side grade.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to give people that choice, and so I think a lot of people, like especially people who might not have been going to play Pokemon tournaments, they just see like bigger number now, so better.
Mhm.
Yeah, true,
Which
true.
it's not like the worst take to have. I mean, there's definitely like you can see the damage increase now. It's pretty
Mhm.
sizable when
Yeah.
you're getting farm downs. But yeah, just with how you actually play Lantern now, I think it definitely has got that slight speed decrease that's really going to impact it in some of the more neutral matchups.
Yeah. I thought they were going to gut Spark because they gave a bunch of things that use Spark Volt Switch. So I was
Yeah, and
like,
then
well, okay, this is the perfect opportunity to like
yeah.
isolate Lantern. But
Mm.
I mean, the problem is still isolate on Lantern, but just in a different way now. So it's we're gonna have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah.
But we do have the first regional of the entire, not just North America, but the entire Play Pokemon season coming up for season number 3, happening in Pittsburgh. And by the time this episode releases, it'll be starting in a couple of days from now. So I have a question for you two. One Pokemon that wasn't changed in the updates, but just wasn't played in last season was Carbink because it was introduced so late. If we were to each make a prediction, how many Carbink do you predict will make it into top 8 at Pittsburgh? What are your
One.
guesses? You're going with 1?
Yeah.
I'm gonna write these down.
I'm
So we can
thinking a
revisit
pretty
it
low
next week.
number as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. I might say like 2 at most.
Oh man, I was gonna go with 2. You
Yeah.
know what? Because you went with 2, I'm gonna go with 3 then.
Okay,
3
okay.
seems so unlikely. I'm just like shooting
Yeah.
myself in the foot. There's nothing on the line for this one, Anicor. I'm just saying 3 to be. You know what? No. I'm gonna split 2. I'm not going to change my.
Okay,
Actually,
okay,
no.
okay.
I'll go 3. I'll go 3. That's fine because I get nothing if we're both right. Right. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, I personally, I think like, like you were saying a bit earlier, Axon, yeah, like, if you were to make a team for this new regional, you'd probably be using a lot of the stuff that you were using last season. And I think this is true. And I think a lot of those things also are like all kind of Carbink counters naturally. So it just does seem like you'd be, if you go into the regional with a Carbink, not saying it'll be bad, but you probably will be facing teams where they have like 4 counters on there,
Yeah.
just by accident.
Yeah.
So
it's like Bastiodon. That's why it's so hard to run it.
yeah.
I mean, its 2 main targets kind of got nerfed, right, with Noctowl and Altari as well. So
Yeah. True.
it's just all the mud boys, all the grass types that are probably going to be more common because the flyers got nerfed.
Yeah. And I mean, Reggie still didn't get touched.
Yeah, Reggie didn't get touched.
So good.
There's just so many things that just kind of beat it. Like you're just kind of hoping to RPS a Sableye or a Charizard or something, right? I don't know. I don't think it's going to be as good as it ranks on PvPoke. I think it's more of a GBL Pokemon to like try to core break some people maybe that are disrespecting it more than it is going to be like a new play Pokemon staple.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I've got a question for you two. What new Pokemon do you think would make it or be like relatively prevalent in the top 8? So by new, I mean like something that we didn't really see last season.
I'm going with Manabuzz. I think Manabuzz would be the best flyer actually, which might be a hot take. Because it beats all the other flyers outside of maybe Altaria, but no one's going to run Altaria anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, they shouldn't. It's so slow now. It's like Medicham can just kind of 2-shield through it now. So I guess I'll go with the other flyer. I don't know how many people actually have a Shadow Gligar ready to go. I know I don't, and I'm kind of disappointed. But I think Gligar is pretty flexible as long as your opponent doesn't RPS you with an Ice type. And so I guess I'll just go with Shadow Gligar specifically. I think it's better. It turns a lot of the 3 shots into 2 shots.
Okay.
Because Gligar is a bulky Pokemon, right? It's a Pokemon that is kind of like around Medicham, I guess, level bulk. Shadow Gligar makes it so Aerial Ace actually does some damage, and Dig can potentially like threaten the Steel types a lot quicker. So I'll go with that.
All right. What do you think, Anicor?
I feel like Gligar is the obvious option. It seems like the most talked about Mon so far. But again, because you picked it, let me let me pick something else. I mean, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of hard. I don't even remember what else like seemed
I think Diggersby could be a
pretty
good
new
option.
and viable. Diggersby, yeah, I think that's an interesting one, to be honest. Because again, like you've got first of all, being able to use Hyper Beam and a ground move is quite interesting. And being able to stack the ground move as well. I'd say Diggersby. Yeah, it's got a lot of good matchups.
Okay. I like it. Yeah, we're gonna wait and see. I mean, personally, I kind of wish I was competing at the first one because there's a lot like of surprise factor you could potentially bring. But like Axon said, it might still be like 5 out of the 6 Pokemon might all still be the same as before. So maybe there's not too much of a difference. But we're
I
gonna
think
wait
what
and
will
see
be
as
really
our
interesting
prediction
though.
shake up.
Yeah, what will be interesting is like because this season is there's not really many events that are happening at the same time. Just watching the meta development week by week, because again, I think this meta is like relatively open, where things could shift on a weekly basis depending on what people have seen the previous week. So I think that'll be kind of exciting.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But that's all the questions I have for us today. Did you have any other questions, Anicor, for Axon?
Nah. Honestly, yeah, it was. I was mainly interested in your take on the meta, and I think we got a little insight into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I know there's a chance that I might face Axon at Sacramento, but I'm hoping Axon goes to UIC so he can beat up on Anicor as well on stream. That'd be a fun one.
Bruv, this guy's just praying for my downfall, you know. He's like, oh, I don't want to replace casters too often, yeah. And then you know.
I gotta put you in the right place, you know, as we have this new transition of co-host. But thank you for taking the time to chat with us, Axon. It was a lot of fun, and just to hear your insight, and hopefully a lot of our listeners also can benefit from that, especially those that haven't gone to show 6 themselves and they're like, I don't know if I could do it, but hey, Axon just went straight into it. He got 5th place at Indianapolis, so anything is possible.
I mean, I guess you know what. Last thing,
yeah.
what is your like key piece of advice for those who are thinking of starting the Play Pokemon circuit this season?
I was so close to like trying to wimp out of doing Indianapolis at the start. It's not even funny. I was getting really nervous about actually putting myself out there and like seeing if I was actually good. I think that the best thing you can do is just to commit and just to try to see how it goes. Put yourself out there. Like the worst thing you can do is lose, I guess. Like that is kind of bad, but it's happened to everyone, right? One bad tournament also doesn't define a battler. I've had a bad tournament or two, and I still won worlds. So, you just gotta realize that in the end of the day, it's just a fun game that you're playing. If you think you're good, if you think that you can potentially make it at these regionals, please try. We would love to see the community grow further and further, keep getting tournaments that are bigger and bigger, maybe even break 256 players, go past that eventually, right? The other games that are alongside Pokemon Go, like the video game and the TCG, you're constantly seeing them get up to like 1,000 players or more. I want to see us get there. I want to see more players step into the light and just join us.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of players that you might not know them, but after one tournament, everyone knows their name, right? Because they had their breakout performance, and that could be anyone, including those that listen. So, really great words of advice. I also saw that after Worlds, you started streaming a lot more recently too. So speaking of streams and everything, where can people find you if they want to get more content from you and get more of your takes, or maybe even participate in a few polls here or there?
Yeah, on Twitter, and on Twitch, I'm both ItsAXN. So twitch.tv/ItsAXN, or just at ItsAXN on Twitter. So if you want to follow me there to stay up to date on whatever weird thoughts I'm thinking, I'd appreciate it.
Awesome.
I love how you do one poll and then all of a sudden Caleb's just like, yeah, this is the poll guy.
That's what I do. I am the poll guy. Yes.
Yeah. First of many.
Yes.
We'll see how it goes. But cool, awesome. And if you want to find Axon on the battlefield, head over down to Sacramento or just climb the leaderboard in GBL, and you'll eventually probably face him at times. But yeah, I only get that pleasure once in a while because I'm much worse at climbing the leaderboard than Axon is. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in. This has been a good one, and glad to have our world champion on this episode. Maybe we'll have you back on in the future, maybe after a big international win or worlds win. I wouldn't count you out, especially after this season's performance. So yeah, best of luck in your future tournaments. I'll see you at Sacramento, and hopefully you'll see Anicor at UIC. But this is it for Battle Gods.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway, hope you have a good one. And if you're not at Pittsburgh, you should tune into Pittsburgh stream and see how right we were about these takes on Lanturn and Carping in the top 8. But yeah, have a good one. Right. Peace out.